This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
With Tony Brueski.
We are talking with forensic scientist and Professor Dan Crane about DNA today. Still talking about the accusations against Rex Heuermann as the Long Island serial killer, the Gilgo Beach murderer. Lots of titles handed out to the individual that was unknown for about 12 years in this horrendous case. When we wrapped up talking yesterday, you were telling us how there were two different strands of this DNA that was found on the burlap sacks. One being from a female, unknown female. The other from a male suspect, and then matched to the home of Rex Heuermann. Both matches to the home of Rex Heuermann. Two people connected to that very property. Now, if they found both DNA on the bodies, and one we're assuming as of this moment likely belongs to either the wife at the home or maybe a child or someone else who frequents the home. But if you're talking this took place 12 years ago and you're still finding the same DNA matches at the home, I would guess it's probably the wife, but that's just an assumption at this moment. Is there any thought to, well, was she involved, or she just happened to be a victim of circumstance where, he's thrown the burlap sacks in the garage or whatever, and then, naturally, go through any home or laundry room, and I can guarantee you're going to have almost everybody's DNA on everything to a certain extent with hair.
Right. Yeah, in the bail document that's associated with this case, the prosecutor, the district attorney, goes out of his way to establish that Heuermann's wife was out of town for these three murders. And so it seems like they're anticipating your line of thinking and saying, look, she's got an alibi. They were able to confirm already that she's unlikely to have been directly involved. And then, I'm thinking, we're talking about duct tape, for instance, it's sticky. And, I think any random roll of duct tape you pick up from somebody's home is almost certain to have some hairs and fibers associated with it. That's just the sticky things.
It reminds me in the Lori Vallow case, there was, I believe, a hair strand or her DNA of some sort on a piece of duct tape that was on, I think, over the mouth of, it was JJ or Tylee. I'm sorry if I don't remember exactly who, but it was a match to her. But she probably physically wasn't there at the time of the actual murders, but it doesn't mean that she actually didn't, tell her brother to carry them out using duct tape that was probably found in the junk drawer of the home.
Right. I get involved with a couple hundred cases, it seems, every year, and it's not at all uncommon for me to be seeing that there's DNA that's been recovered off of duct tape. Mm-hmm. It seems like 1 in 10 cases that I review the test results for, duct tape is involved.
Yeah, if you want DNA, get some duct tape. give the suspect a free roll of duct tape and then watch the trash.
Right. Well, if you're going to commit a crime, perhaps try to stay away from the use of duct tape. That's not going to help you in the end.
So when you have this type of evidence that's come forward, obviously they've been watching this fairly closely for the last year or so as they've been digging deeper into this. I guess one of the questions I have is, we're about 12, 13 years out from when the initial crimes actually took place. Why did it take this long to take a look at the female strands of hairs and run that through a database? I don't know that you'd have the answer, but it seems like you'd run almost any type of DNA material through a database, not just the male. Was that an oversight? Were they just assuming, well, a female couldn't have done this? Or what was the delay of all that time to actually run it in the database just to see?
Yeah, well, you've mentioned database. I don't think they ran these in a database.
Okay.
But the question remains, why did they wait to generate even the mitochondrial DNA test results? And it's curious because they must have done some, at least cursory DNA testing early on, like around 2010, when these bodies were being discovered, because that must be how it is that they knew they had some female hair that was not the victims, and some male hair that obviously wasn't the victims. So they must have done some testing, and it's unclear, based on the bail document, what that testing was, how they knew they had some non-victim female hair and non-victim male hair. So they must have done something. And then the question is, why did they wait 10, 12 years to do the mitochondrial DNA testing? In the press coverage and the public posturing by the district attorney, they're talking about how advances in DNA testing are what allowed this to play out the way that it did. I'm not buying that explanation. They did mitochondrial DNA testing. The FBI was doing mitochondrial DNA testing as long ago as 1999, right? So 10, 12 years before these bodies were recovered and these crimes had occurred. So mitochondrial DNA testing had been around, but it's also clear from the bail document that they farmed this out. It wasn't mitochondrial DNA testing that was being done by the Suffolk County lab. Instead, they farmed it out to two different laboratories. And what may be the case is that it took the new district attorney or a renewed interest in the case for them to say, hey, look, our lab doesn't deal with these mitochondrial types of tests. Is there anybody that we know that might be able to do it? And it, was that kind of questioning that caused them to send it out. Those tests probably could have been done back in 2010, 2011, 2012, but weren't.
That's interesting. It makes you wonder a little bit too about the attention that was paid to this case for all that time. And luckily, I mean, they really at the end here, they certainly narrowed in, and it looks like they may have a slam dunk here with the DNA alone, and then you add in the Google searches and you add in everything else that they found on this individual. It looks pretty damning, but it does make you wonder. And I ask you from a perspective of working in this area, in your area, in these sort of cases, do we or have you seen less attention put on cases where the victims tend to be not necessarily, a rich or a middle-class wife or student or child? These people were sex workers at the time. And obviously society does look down upon that and sometimes puts less value. I'm not saying they should by any means, but it seems to be how that works. Is there less prioritization that's put on some of these cases when it seems to be essentially what one would callously call like society's throwaways and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say. I look at the cases that come across my desk, right?
Yeah,
and I don't seek them out, and so I don't know if I'm getting a random sampling of what's actually being evaluated.
Sure.
It does seem it does seem that higher profile cases do. In those cases, no stones are left unturned, whereas in less high-profile cases, perhaps like those associated with sex workers, that there's less vigor in terms of how many samples are tested and how aggressively comparisons are made. So I see that, but I don't know that explains why there was a delay in this particular case.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.